Here's CBS 4's Ty Russell.
He doesn't have anything on him, right?
No,
Jewelry.
If the name Conor McGregor brings to mind glory, ferocity, and arrogance, it's easy to see why. He was once the most celebrated fighter on the planet, an undisputed champion who knocked out opponents in mere seconds and dominated 2 UFC weight classes. He was considered the golden goose of the UFC, a fighter who turned every press conference into an event and every fight into a global spectacle. However, in recent years, his name has been tied to a string of increasingly serious controversies, from courtroom battles to disturbing incidents outside the octagon. So, what really happened, and how did a seemingly invincible champion become a symbol of the unchecked collapse of a personal empire? Today we'll delve deep into the shocking truth.
This guy TKOs people. When I knock people out, they don't move. They're not. Who the is that guy?
You might not like Conor McGregor, but if you look back at his beginnings, it's hard not to be impressed. We have to go back to a young man living in a working-class neighbourhood in Dublin, Ireland, with no fame and no privilege. By day, he worked as a plumber, but by night he buried himself in the gym, dreaming of something no one else dared to believe: becoming a UFC legend. His words from that time perfectly summed it up. As he would later say, "I'm not going to that site another day in my life. I'm going to just drive out of this building and pursue this dream." He didn't just dream it, he did it. Then, on April 6th, 2013, a name no one knew stepped into the UFC and made the world watch in a stunning 67 seconds. He didn't just win, he knocked out his opponent, delivering a proclamation as if he already knew his destiny. McGregor exploded onto the scene, not just with his fists, but with his words, and an ego unlike anything the sport had ever seen. He was a force of nature, but that same unstoppable force would eventually send him careening into the abyss.
Thank you very much. Dana! 60 G's, baby!
To understand McGregor's arrogance, we must return to that defining moment of his debut. Standing in the octagon, he didn't just celebrate, he held his head high and threw out a line that seemed to wage war on the entire division. 60 G's, baby! It sounded like gratitude, but to those who understood, it was a deliberate threat. "I'm not just here to win," he was saying, "I'm here to make the whole world pay me what I'm worth." In his early years, that brashness was celebrated as part of his aura. He dared to move up in weight classes and took risks that earned him respect. Experts praised his technique, and the media lauded his fighting spirit. He made the world watch how he won, always acting as if his opponents were lucky to share the stage with him. This attitude became a part of the spectacle that led him to dominate the featherweight division. In a single, shocking 13-second knockout of Jose Aldo, he ended a 7-year undefeated reign. He was no longer just a challenger, he was the one rewriting the language of victory. Every fight became a stage where he showcased his arrogance, his absurd confidence, and a theatrical, couldn't-care-less attitude.
September 27th, I'm going to rip Dustin's head clean off, you know. It makes no difference about nothing. Dustin a little pea head, and he got wobbled about 40 times. His chin is deteriorating. Every single contest he gets in, he hits one knee.
He had become invincible in his own mind. But that stage met its match in an opponent who didn't need scripted lines. As Nate Diaz stepped up, he threw McGregor's bravado right back at him with an attitude just as raw and unyielding.
He's hiding somewhere. I don't know where the You still gotta walk.
We'll see. We'll see. See, come and see what happens.
Yeah, right.
I told you I'll put a hole in your face.
In one of the UFC's most iconic verbal showdowns, the two didn't just clash with punches, they collided with words. They both had the same style, raw, direct, and unrelenting. But for McGregor, this time was different. In March 2016, McGregor tasted defeat for the first time. As the second round heated up, Diaz unleashed a barrage of punches that left the champion reeling. Moments later, McGregor was forced to tap out in a chokehold. It was a sight no one could have imagined, especially from the man who had just proclaimed himself invincible. The surrender was not just a defeat, it was a public humbling. The most arrogant figure in the UFC was the first to beg for mercy. This one moment marked a turning point, a crack in the foundation of his self-created empire, and after that first fall, McGregor didn't get back up. He began to plummet. No longer the cold, calculated champion, he gradually became the very caricature he once scorned, a celebrity thriving on scandal. In 2019, McGregor shocked the world by punching an elderly man in a bar, all because the man refused to drink the whiskey McGregor was promoting. This wasn't the instinct of a fighter anymore, it was a distorted need for control, where fame, no longer satisfied by victories, sought gratification through domineering power. Less than a month later in Miami, a fan asked for a photo. McGregor promptly snatched the phone, smashed it on the ground, and walked away as if nothing had happened. This wasn't behavior confined to the octagon, it was a complete loss of control in real life. But the darkest moments were the repeated accusations that began to surface in Dublin. One report might be a question mark, but a string of them was a glaring red flag. When the press confronted him, he either stayed silent or responded with a mocking attitude. Instead of putting doubts to rest, he poured fuel on the fire of suspicion. After a string of relentless scandals, McGregor needed a UFC comeback to salvage his reputation. He returned to face Donald Cerrone, a veteran fighter well past his prime, and won in just 40 seconds. The victory was a proclamation, "I'm still here, and I'm still dangerous." But the joy was short-lived. He vanished again, only to return to fight Dustin Poirier, the name he had defeated back in 2014. However, in their third match, when he stepped back to stand, his left leg broke right in front of millions of viewers. It was one of the most horrifying moments in UFC history. A broken bone, but also a broken image. And while a real fighter might choose humility after such a defeat, McGregor chose a different path. While on the stretcher, he still tried to shout loudly, declaring that the fight was not over and even attacking his opponent's wife. This was a man who would rather cling to his pride than accept reality. But the controversies didn't stop there. When the UFC started talking about his return to the ring, attention immediately turned to his physical appearance. Experts noted a massive change in his body, with bulging muscles and a wide face. Rumors of steroid use were rampant, and Joe Rogan, a powerful voice in MMA, even publicly joked about it. Reports claimed that McGregor had not undergone any drug testing throughout 2022, a fact that added to the growing belief that he had used his time off to use recovery aids. This only reinforced the image of a man who no longer abided by the rules, inside or outside of the cage. Whether you love or hate Conor McGregor, there's no denying he left an indelible mark on UFC history. He turned every fight into a global event, propelling MMA from a niche sport into the mainstream. But his arrogant ego and intoxication with power pushed him away from everything that once made people love him. Success is brilliant, but failure is noisy. And the most painful failure is when you fail in your own eyes. McGregor was not defeated by any fighter. He was defeated by complacency, by the illusion that he was always above all standards. Can a man who once defeated the world defeat himself? And when a legend falls, should we mourn or learn? Perhaps this is not just McGregor's story. It is a reminder for all of us.